Hello, everyone. This is Thomas Pepin, NHL Talk. I'm Thomas Pepin, and let's talk about the NHL. So, today, continuing the NHL expansion series where we consider if failed franchises or new franchises or new potential markets could succeed in the next NHL expansion. And so, today we are taking a look at a failed franchise, the Hartford Whalers. And again, what we're not doing is considering necessarily the reason for the failure, but just some of the underlying data points and if they indicate that the franchise could conceivably succeed if the NHL was to expand. So that's what we're doing, and we can get right to it. I just have one last thing to pull up. All right, and so I did have a couple minutes to start pulling things up before, so thankfully everything's pulled up now. I just began reading information about the history of the franchise because, of course, I'm not super familiar. This is before I was born, I believe. When did they stop in the NHL? Yeah, started before I was born and then ended when I was young. So, so they were going to build a new arena in the Hartford Civic Center. So that should be the most recent and the correct address. Okay, so yes, and thankfully for me that makes it simpler. That it was all done at the Hartford Civic Center. And where did I usually start? So usually I'd start with the population, but since I already have this pulled up, let's go ahead and get it out of the way. Where is... So it's 14,750 is the capacity, and that's quite small. Oh, an address. I don't think I'll necessarily need it, but we'll pull it up anyways. Hartford. And what was the next thing I was going to... Oh, yeah. Okay, so those are done, and then we... Do I need this up still? I don't think so. If I need it again, I'll go back. So we've got the address. Now, I don't really need to do this, but I'm going to just because I want to figure out where everything is at geographically. So let's make this full screen so it's easier. Let's see how close is New York Rangers. No. So that's, is it the coast? Where? Islanders are on the island, if I'm not mistaken. And then New Jersey's not going to be closer, is it? Where's New Jersey's? Arena. Okay, this is where, yeah, this is outside of my knowledge. So 122. Is it? Yeah, New York, New Jersey, I believe. So that's further. And then Boston Bruins, I think, are the closest then. Okay. So this one's kind of similar to what we saw yesterday with Cleveland and Columbus. So the closest is Boston, and it's 100 miles, and then Cleveland, Ohio to Columbus, Ohio. It's even further. So this makes Cleveland look even better in comparison, at least to Hartford. But in any case, so it's right smack in the middle, essentially between New York City and Boston. And north, there's nothing close. So, oh, and where's Pittsburgh in here? Philadelphia. No, that's south. Yeah, so nothing else is close. So, I'd say already my instinct tells me that it's kind of close to everything. Albany, if you look at it, is maybe a better spot to have a team, geographically at least. You could argue Syracuse. The one benefit, though, of Hartford is it's in close proximity, so that means travel is going to be easier. So it's not so bad. There's, positives and negatives of everything, right? So, the other thing I want to see is, just want to figure out the shape here of where Connecticut starts and ends, so it goes right along there. So then there's not really, you could argue there's not really any fan base overlap. Like, I mean, there would be, because the team doesn't exist, and people from Boston or people from this area would be fans of potentially of Boston, of New York Islanders, maybe New Jersey, maybe Buffalo. There's a bunch of different options for them. So, but conceivably, if a team existed, all the people in Connecticut would be fans of the team, in theory. It's hard to say, but I mean, that would make sense. Connecticut. That's the way I can remember how to spell it. Population's not very big. It's not so bad either. And what I'm wondering is if it would start to eat into, or I mean, sorry, I guess the better way to put it is to gather fans from other places like Rhode Island. Am I missing anything from zooming in? So Rhode Island, I mean, would people in, yeah, I think people in Maine would be fans of the Bruins. Maybe. That's hard to say. New Hampshire, I believe, would probably be Boston fans. Vermont, would they maybe be more interested in being a Hartford fan than Buffalo, Boston, New York? Don't know. Maybe Northern New York fans maybe could get to be fans of Hartford. So, I mean, see, that's the thing is when you bring in a new team, it's hard to say really where their fans are going to come from. Like you want to say clearly that their local geography would be fans, but you never know really how it would all kind of move around. So for example, the fans that used to cheer for Atlanta, would they become Nashville fans? Would they become Florida fans? Carolina fans? Like, it's really tough to say. So anyways, just kind of thinking more broadly, but oh, I didn't want that. I want this. We're going to get the population. So this is like, I think this one's going to be quite similar to Quebec. Or sorry, not Quebec, Winnipeg. And I guess in effect probably Quebec too. But so it's basically 3 times the population of that was Manitoba I did, right? Not just yeah, so I did the whole province. But I mean, that would still be representative because you're probably getting fans from Saskatchewan and northern Ontario, maybe. And yeah. So, anyways. So, just because hockey's, well, we'll see in a second, but hockey, I would argue, is probably not as popular in Connecticut on a, or I guess maybe the better way to put it is the fan base would be not as strong in Connecticut as Manitoba. I would argue that. I don't know if that's necessarily accurate. We'll see with hockey registration, but just always the way it works, even with the northern states, is that the registration as a percentage of the population seems to be lower than Canada in all cases. But we'll see. I don't want to jump the gun here. So I guess that's probably the best thing to move on to next. We want to figure out that's pretty high. But still not even close. See, this is what I mean. So 12, 7, 2, 9. 1, 2, 7, 2, 9. So yeah, I mean, just right away. So the population is 3 times Manitoba, and the hockey registration is half. So I mean, it's exactly as I was expecting. Mind you, where does it sit for? Actually, we can see that on the other one here, so I don't really need to look at that. So hockey registration sits in total maybe 13th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14th. So 14th in registration, but as a percentage of their population, they sit, what is that, probably 10th? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12th. So quite high, but that's obviously because it's their northern state and hockey's more popular there. So, and their population's small, so it kind of goes together. So anyways, you would argue probably one of the strongest places for potential franchise in the States, just from hockey registration, which is a proxy for fan base. And I just want to scan through here. So Minnesota. See, Wisconsin's one of those ones that we're going to talk about them eventually, but man, are they ever... It would make sense that there'd be a hockey team in Wisconsin. It really feels like there should be. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So Massachusetts, wow, that's really high. And what's the population there? 'Cause it's not very high, is it? Yeah. Basically double Connecticut. Double Connecticut, and their registration is almost triple. So clearly hockey's a big deal in Massachusetts. New York, big population. Michigan, similar to Minnesota. Pennsylvania, kind of similar. California, just big population. Illinois, somewhat similar. So yeah, Connecticut's basically and it's going to be similar to Colorado, I guess, in the end. Huh. Interesting. So anyways, just wanted to contrast just with some other states to get a feel of what the better idea of what the market's like. Okay, so their worst season was their first season. So 9,854. The league average in 79.80. Divided by 840. It's not that far off, actually. Even though the number's low, it's not far from the league average that year. This is starting to look quite reasonable. Maximum. Right before they knew they were going. But actually, I'll wait before I start talking about that. I was just about to talk about something. Sorry, 14574, 14574. And that's in 8788. Oops. 840. So their maximum attendance is just above league average. But the problem is that's their capacity, so they couldn't do better anyways. But they're still below their capacity. So even at their best year, they couldn't go to capacity. So not very good. Anyways, so what I was tempted to say but didn't, and now will discuss is this fluctuation here. So starts low, goes high, goes low, and then goes high again. So not very consistent, which seems like they're, at least during this time frame, fair weathered fans, which is not a good thing. But yeah, it's not so. I wouldn't necessarily draw any conclusions too quickly, because I mean, well, we saw the same sort of thing for Colorado and Winnipeg. And Winnipeg, for example, is in theory supposed to be a decent market for fan base. So, yeah, I wonder if they had it in 96. Don't think so. It doesn't look like it, so no answer for that. And then we can do all the math. And I'll leave this open just in case. All right, so let's see here about the numbers. So population already, you can tell, is not very good for a fan base. I want to try something here. I wonder what it's going to do. So equals that times that equals that times that. Oh, it's the same anyways, because the way it all divides together. So, so yeah, like I was saying, so the population seems low. Registration is, all things considered, relatively high for the population, but not quite as good as some other states like we saw with Massachusetts and Wisconsin and things like that. Minimum attendance, what's that comparable to? The original Atlanta franchise, that's not very good. When was that for that franchise? Atlanta. $79.80. Same year as Atlanta. Interesting. So I'd say it seems similar to Atlanta's average attendance approximately. Still not best way to compare. You could argue similar to the Jets, because if you go back, how were the Jets in that time frame? Because the Jets were essentially the same endpoint. Man, actually, my bad. So Winnipeg actually was pretty consistent. Just not enough is the gist of it. So the peaks were better in Hartford, but the average was better in Winnipeg. So I would say you could estimate that the fan base would be, well, better on the high end, but worse on the low end and worse on average. So if you think that Winnipeg can survive, then you would think that Hartford is close to surviving or could survive. So it depends on the strength of your certainty that Winnipeg would survive. If you're definitely certain that Winnipeg would survive, then you would think that probably Hartford would survive. If you think that probably Winnipeg would survive, then you think that maybe Hartford would survive, and so on. So that's probably a really good way to put it. In any case, we'll keep talking about the rest here. So registration as a percentage of the population is kind of on its own. Better than Colorado. Not quite Ohio. But Ohio, again, that one it's skewed because of the way we did the numbers there. So maybe similar to Ohio. What was Ohio's numbers? The official, at least. So for the state, Connecticut is double Ohio's. But Ohio has dramatically larger population, right? Is it 3 times? So 11, 4 times basically. So you could maybe argue that it's similar to Columbus then. So it's somewhere, I would probably argue somewhere between Columbus and Winnipeg is what it feels like based on these numbers here. And my instincts, I hope that everybody's kind of on the same page as me here, but if you're following my logic on that. So, and I forgot to, I might as well take a look at Columbus's attendance too. Columbus. Oh, I didn't bookmark it. Yeah. So the thing is this is all newer, right? So this ended in 97. Columbus started in 2000. So, and on the peaks, they're, 14574. It's kind of in the valleys for Columbus, but again, we've moved forward in years, and the attendance has all been going up. So that's interesting. So So maybe... So what came to mind is that their peaks are probably similar to what their valleys would be now. So in terms of like uh, the fluctuations in attendance. So in all likelihood, the minimum attendance would probably be somewhere around the 13,000 mark. Maybe slightly less, but I mean somewhere around there. 13,000 is... What's Winnipeg's worst? It's right near the Winnipeg. So like I said, I think it's kind of right between Winnipeg and Columbus. So if that's true, and if you believe Winnipeg can survive, then you should believe that Hartford would survive. Or at least that's the way it's looking so far. So still getting ahead of ourselves because we have more data to look at here. So minimum attendance differential versus capacity is similar to Anaheim, similar to Atlanta. Is it really like the North Stars? That can't be right. What was the time frame for the North Stars? Because they were basically the same time, weren't they? 67 to 92, 93. Man. So is it really the same? Wait, so let's get apples to apples here. 92, 93. So these are the same time frames. The worst in Minnesota was way worse than Hartford. And the best were better than Hartford. So the fluctuations are way more dramatic in Minnesota than Hartford. But the fan base is going to be larger in Minnesota. So you could even argue that this might be maybe equal to Columbus and not quite Minnesota numbers, but what's Minnesota's population? 5 million. So it's not far off. I mean, it's nearly double, but it's not quite double. Wow. But I would still argue certainly that the well, as we saw as a percentage of the population, Minnesota is right, like they were the best, weren't they? Well, second best, but it's misleading with Alaska. So, geez, so they're looking even stronger. The more you look at it, the stronger they look. Maximum attendance versus capacity. They couldn't quite fill their arena. I mean, Columbus. Yeah. So Columbus couldn't quite fill it either, or hasn't been able to fill it. But again, remember that their capacity is, well, in this case, nearly 4,000 more. So if you gave them a smaller rink, something similar to maybe like an Anaheim or a Winnipeg, but you could probably do better than Winnipeg. I'd probably aim for something like a uh, Anaheim, San Jose size, 17,000. Probably they could, in terms of growth potential, could maybe do. Anyways, and then versus the league, because this is kind of really what matters, is you want to compare it to other markets. So versus the league in their low year, similar to Columbus on their low year, and that's a new franchise, so just keep that in mind. Better than Anaheim on the low end. Similar to Winnipeg on the low end, very close. Close to Colorado. So that's where, like I was saying, I think it's somewhere in the middle there. And then on the high end, it's better than the league. So it looks like a strong market. It really does. It's just how strong is the question. So I think, yeah. So now we'll kind of make the verdict. And I think, so it's not in Minnesota. I don't think it can get those kind of numbers consistently. And we've seen that Minnesota is sold out all the time now. Their minimum is basically at capacity. They're not in Minnesota. It wouldn't work. Are they at Colorado? They're close. Yeah, they're close. Are they like in Anaheim? Again, kind of close. And remember, these numbers are old numbers. Now that you would expect more fans. They really seem very similar to Columbus, in my opinion. I think in the end, they probably perform similarly. Because if you look at versus the league, they're pretty similar on the low end and on the high end. And versus their capacity on the high end, they're about the same. So I would estimate that they would perform very similarly. And so yesterday I argued that Cleveland could conceivably work, but it seems like a bit of a stretch, and it would be probably way further down. Something soon for Hartford really seems like it could work. Now, I know that the NHL probably wouldn't consider it, or at least seriously consider it, because it's a small market. This is where things like local market industry, things like that, would affect their choice. And they really go for like profits and things like that, not for fan base and all that. So I would argue that it seems unlikely that the NHL would go for Hartford, which is unfortunate, because I think they probably would work. And what I would want to do, to contrast this with Cleveland, is don't go with Cleveland as a franchise and just say that they're not gonna, that it's just not gonna happen, and then just do Hartford instead. That's what I would do. And for the love of the sport, or however you want to put it, but to that effect, kind of, it seems like this market should have a team. it really feels like that. Now, one last thing I just want to do before I end the thought there is let's take a look at AHL and ECHL teams. Because I'm not super familiar with what teams exist in Connecticut. It's got to be an AHL team, and I just can't remember who. Hartford Wolfpack, yeah, and they're a strong market. Any other ones? Oh, Bridgeport. And where's Bridgeport? Bridgeport. Wow, so you're really getting towards New York, and they're still able to... Wait, what team is Bridgeport? Oh, because it's the Islanders. So yeah, you're probably getting into the New York fan base, which makes sense because you're getting towards New York. So yeah, it feels like it makes sense for Cleveland to stay as an AHL team and as the farm team for Columbus. But it feels like Hartford should have a team. It really feels like that. And especially because there's two teams in Connecticut. Isn't there one? Oh, Albany doesn't have a team anymore. So maybe put, because Albany was really close, right? Or relatively close. So you could make, if you turn the Islanders farm team into Albany, which kind of opens up the market for them to be Hartford fans. Just as a thought, strategically, I don't know if that necessarily would work, but as a thought experiment, maybe something to consider. There's lots in Pennsylvania, man. Rhode Island, Springfield, Mass. That was close to Hartford, right? And maybe move the Springfield team too to clear up a market for them. It's kind of what I would want to do. Clear out or clear up all the teams that kind of eat at the potential fan base to go to Hartford and relocate them, close to their teams, but in other markets that are maybe ECHL teams or along those lines. Or you do one of those switches where a team, so like we see here, Springfield is for St. Louis. Well, you could put, get rid of Springfield and do something closer to St. Louis because that's pretty far. So anyways, just some thoughts, but and let's look at their attendance. So Bridgeport. So this is just to get closer. Yeah, they don't get that much attendance. It's not very strong in Bridgeport, which makes sense because there's two teams very close. So it makes sense to even just get rid of the team to begin with. Or is... Wait. Am I looking at this wrong? Oh, because it's the Bridgeport Tigers, not the Islanders. Where is it then? Do they not have it? Why are they making it so hard to find? Well, it's not very strong, clearly. Like, look at those numbers. That's bad. So 4,000 down to 2,000. I mean, it makes sense not even to have the team exist in the AHL. So there's that. And then 4,000 again. So that's, ballpark 8,000. What was the attendance before? 9,000. It doesn't seem like if you just add the two together that's going to make up the fan base. I bet you anything. It's like I was saying from all the other... because all these people, they're not going to go to the AHL games if the team still played where they were. They're going to go to NHL games. It just doesn't make sense. And then you're going to draw in other people. Plus, you're going to have corporate stuff. So, yeah, the AHL teams are not very strong, I would argue. Let's just, out of interest, see. Yeah, nothing in the ECHL. So, yeah, that makes it look slightly worse. But they're AHL teams. Yeah, and so, I mean, most teams are really around that mark anyways. Cleveland looks strong, though. Even having the NHL team in Columbus. Providence. That's interesting. San Diego, Lehigh Valley, Charlotte, Iowa, Springfield. So if you got rid of Springfield, so it's like I was saying, my original instinct. You get rid of Springfield, Hartford, and Bridgeport, and then that's, well, let's say 3,000 plus 4,000 plus 4,000 plus 6,000, 14,000. It's going to fill your rink. It's pretty much right on. Like, it's like I said, so it's kind of similar to, I think in the end, looking at those numbers, it's similar to a Winnipeg probably. Similar, maybe slightly worse than a Colorado, but still pretty close. Probably not as close to a Columbus as I was originally predicting. Maybe towards like an Anaheim. So on the low end of fan bases and potential potential attendance, but still seems possible. So I think that's a good way to conclude it, is Hartford so far looks, and I guess this is what I predicted anyways, looks like a market that could succeed. would not be one of your strongest markets, would probably be towards the lower end. But if you think that Winnipeg can succeed, you probably would think that Hartford could succeed. And I mean, same sort of thing with Colorado. If you think all those teams can succeed, then you should kind of think that that Hartford would succeed. That's what I would argue, at least. So I think that's the conclusion. Is it's not an ideal market, but it could work. And if you're going to consider anywhere, they should be a team you should consider, and a geography, like a location that you should consider. So I think that's my opinion. Yeah. And so we'll leave it there. So if you like the stream, hit the like button, share with your friends, subscribe, turn on notifications. Otherwise, channel homepage has upcoming streams. Is now 3 p.m. daily except for Sundays. If you're interested in what time it would be for you, you can have a look at the channel homepage. That'll tell you, it'll translate it to your time zone. Otherwise, any comments, leave them in the comments. Suggestions, same thing. And tomorrow we are moving on to Kansas City, which I say this for every one of them. It's going to be interesting. It doesn't feel like they're going to be one of the best options, but I might be proven wrong. We'll see. It's the whole point of doing this is to see if they could work, and so I guess that's what we're going to see. So that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.